Hey, welcome to linear algebra. This is an introduction to using MATLAB. One of the first things you'll see when you open up the software is an environment somewhat like this. I want to point out that when you download and install the desktop version, it creates a MATLAB folder inside your documents. So if you start online, you might want to save anything that you're doing down to a MATLAB folder like this. And if you do install it later, then this will work really well. You can see the files I have over here are the files in this folder that I've created and use in MATLAB. Now I'm going to encourage you just to start off and open up a new live script. Now there are various environments you can open up, but for me, the easiest one to use is the live script. And what happens here is that I have both options to put in code, which will let me execute MATLAB commands, and I can also use text to type notes to myself or to someone else. This is the environment we're going to use for our labs. And this is basically what I use. A version of this is what I use to get the notes out online. So let's go through it. And for example, to create a matrix M, I use square brackets. And I separate my entries in a row with spaces, use a semicolon to separate the different rows. And then there are a couple of different ways to execute this. So you can hit the run button, and then there are all these run options here, run in advance, run to end, which are fine. There's different hotkeys that people use. You can click on run. I tend to use Control Enter. That's what I did just there. And now you can see that I have my matrix output over here. Now, I like using the inline version rather than the side-by-side. Some people have different views on that. That's fine. This is what I do. You can do what you'd like. So next, I'm going to hit enter a couple of times. I've got some space here, and now I want to use this text button. What that's going to do is that's going to change the line from code to text. And now I can type things. All right. And I've got different kinds of things I can do to make headings and to use bold and italics. And so this little area here gives me a basic text editor where I can create, the answers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this will work pretty much like the editors that you're used to, the text editors that you're used to using. So I'll just say this: when you save, you're going to get it coming up into your MATLAB folder, right? And it'll come up as an MLX file, which is good, right? Just letting you know that that is the correct extension to save these things for. These .m's are functions or little programs that I've written. Don't worry about those. MLX will be good for the live script. So you see that there's two kind of areas over here. I'll show this one first, the workspace. Notice that M is a matrix that I've created. My demo actually failed because the sound was off. So these are two I created in the previous version of this demo that I was trying to do. But it tells you all the things that have been, these are the variables that are active, right? We've named them, we've called them, and so that's one area you want to look at. The second area is this command window. Let me kind of show you what happens down there. So say I don't really know exactly how it works, how something works. I can come down here and I can practice. And this just lets me type in a MATLAB command straight in the command prompt. And let me say that I'm trying the randomization function. So I'm going to try randi35. I don't know what it does. I think it's random integer. I mean, I know what it does, but suppose I didn't. And I can just come down here, and when I hit enter, I go, oh, wow, that's a 5 by 5 matrix, and no entry in it is bigger than a 5. Huh. Okay, so I'm starting to map things, right? And it turned out to be 5 by 5 and no entry. They're all positive integers, and they're all positive integers between 3 and 5. Excuse me, between, they're 1, 2s, and 3s, right? No zeros. Okay, positive integers. That sounds interesting. So let me go back up here now that I know what that is. Oops, sorry, I was just trying to make this part. So you can make different things bigger or smaller depending on what you want to do. And I just deleted that so I'd have more room here on the screen. So I can create a matrix Q equal to randi, and let me try something like 5, 4, 3. All right, and I'll hit run this time. Okay, so that's interesting. Now the matrix has 4 rows, has 3 columns, and nothing in it bigger than a 5. Okay, so just remember, this is the template, this is the environment we're going to use for the different labs that you'll do. And there'll be hopefully between 8 and 10 of those labs this semester, and they're going to be a key part of your grade. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how some of these how to use some of the basic operations. For example, I can row reduce a matrix, which you'll learn about in the very first lesson. Oops, I needed to hit Control Enter, not just Enter. And so now I've got the row reduced echelon form of Q. I can also do the row reduced echelon form of this matrix M that I created. Okay, which has a row of zeros here at the bottom as well, like this one does. We'll talk more about what that means. I can try to add them. I can do an M plus Q, but you'll notice I got this little exclamation point. The matrix dimensions didn't work out for adding them. Again, I'm not really going to teach you about that, but I just use a plus sign to add them, a minus sign to subtract them. And if I do this right, I can multiply them using the asterisk. So Q times M. And it looks like I got this one right. No, what? Oh, it's still hanging up. Let me get rid of that. I think it's hanging up on that. And so there we go. It turned out that I could multiply them this way. Q times M works. If I try to do M times Q, I bet it won't. And again, this is incorrect dimensions. I don't know if you can see that in the red down there, the error using multiply because the matrix dimensions don't agree. They do agree this way, and that turned out just fine. There's another feature I'd like to talk about. I can create section breaks. And then this allows me to have 2 different sections, and that's what this is for, so that I can run stuff in one section and it doesn't affect anything else. So I can, if I have a bug I'm trying to find, something wasn't working right, I can work in a section and it doesn't jack up everything else. You saw that it failed to compile because I had an error here, right? So if I have an error in a section, I can work in other sections before I debug that error. So it sort of separates the different parts of this little notebook I'm putting together. So I want you to think of the command window area here. It's also a practice area, so it doesn't affect what's going on in my live script. And live script is what MATLAB calls it. Most other programs are calling them notebooks, live notebooks, interactive notebooks. But I can make the command window big, and then I can practice new techniques down here. Like I could try transpose of Q and see what that does. Quick note about the online version, it does use, these do get synced up. Your MATLAB file on your local machine, you can store files online. There's not a ton of storage, so if you get huge programs, it's a little, you have to do something, but you can store a pretty good amount. Most people, I think, who've taken my class in the past have been able to store all their labs up there online. So technically, you don't ever need to use the desktop. When I'm talking to you about MATLAB, I'll generally be using the desktop version, but when you pull up the online version, you'll find that all of the commands look a whole lot the same. And again, it's great if we have a site license for the desktop version if you want to go download it. And again, just make sure you're on a broadband, high-speed broadband internet when you download it, because even then it'll take, maybe 10 minutes to download, even going fast. Also, I would suggest to not load anything but the standard packages. There's a bunch of packages that look really cool and interesting. They sound interesting. You don't need them for this. It's a programming language, so it has a lot of features that you can program in, and we really won't be using too much of that. So don't load any special packages. I just said it was a programming language. Let me show you. This is Windows. I'm hitting Control E. It switches from a text to from a code block to a text block, and I can toggle it back and forth using Control E. I don't know what the Apple hotkey is, but I'm sure there is one. And why am I doing this? So I'm just going to make the point that MATLAB is a programming language. And we're not going to use the programming features very often, but some labs I will actually do things. So I can do for I equals 1 to 10, and I can make a little for loop here. So wait, that needs an equals sign. Okay. For I equals 1 to 10, and I can do this rand I of I. Okay, so now I is, maybe I should use something different. Maybe I should use like K or something. So rand I, the I there stands for integer. K is we're going to start at 1 and go to 10. All right, and then when I hit Control Enter, it's created these different values. So that's interesting. So let's do this. Why don't we do, say, we'll do some 3 by 3 matrices. Wait, I'm sorry. We'll be allowed to use numbers up to 3 and up to 5, and then we'll have K. And now you see that we have a 1 by 1 matrix, a 2 by 2, a 3 by 3. So the K is actually controlling the size of this matrix. And as I scroll down here, oops, let me get rid of that for you. Sorry. Oops. There we go. Right? This little for loop just created 10 matrices of size 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, all the way up to 10 by 10. We're not going to use a ton of programming, but there are some times where it's pretty nice. Let's see. So what if I do A equals rand I 5, 3, and let's hit Control Enter, and wait, I want B equals to rand I. I'm going to do the same thing, 5, 3, Enter, and then because it's a programming language, I have these logical operators I can use. Sorry, trying to get that where you can see it. A equals B. Now notice what it does, okay? It gives a matrix with zeros and ones, and it says it's a logical array. Well, what's it doing? It's saying, well, hey, there are places where the entries are the same. That's where I'll put a 1. So it has a 1 in the top left. That means because this one and this one in that particular spot, A and B were the same. And 5 and 5 are the same, so I get a 1 in the top right. And someplace like here where I had different numbers, a 4 and a 1, I get a 0. So 1s are true and 0s are false. So we can check to see if two matrices are equal. And how will we know? Well, I'd have to get a matrix that had all 1s and no 0s. If any 0 at all was there, then I know that the matrices are not identical. One thing that's useful here is I'll show you, we've got a couple of options, and this undock option allows me to just get my live text editor. And so you can full screen this. I won't, well, if I full screen it, it's going to cover way more than the screen. But you can make this bigger so that you have a lot more room to work. And when I'm done working in kind of what you might think of as full screen mode, I can go back to dock the live editor, and I'm back into my normal setup. So that's pretty much a quick intro to the basic functionality of MATLAB. It's a great programming language. It's just built for linear algebra. I mean, it just makes matrices so easy to enter and add, multiply, take the transpose of, RREF, you know, all of the things that you want to do, determinants. All of that is extremely easy to accomplish. So it's going to be a great tool. We're going to focus on learning linear algebra, not just how to do stuff by hand. Now, you will have to do things by hand, but what I care a lot more about is what does it mean, right? Suppose you are able to row reduce an augmented matrix. What does that output mean? What can we conclude about the problem we're trying to solve? So that's my quick intro. Go get MATLAB online or the desktop version, whichever you prefer, and get to work. Get in there and start playing. I'll be back soon. Have a good evening.